divided into 12 months. This relates to the cycle of nature. Everything is happening in cycles because it's the movement that keeps creation alive. If the movement stops, everything goes back to source. And so this movement is orchestrated by the planets and the stars, the galaxies. Everything is constantly moving. Nothing is static. The earth is rolling around its own axis, and it's circling around the sun. And all this changes the vibrations in our bodies. With the seasons, it's obvious. We can see our body is responding to the temperature. Our body is responding to the different levels of moisture, to the trees, the fruits, the vegetables growing or drying up. But it's much more than that. It's much deeper than that. What we can see externally is nothing compared to the amount of activity that's really taking place. And so this is how the calendar was built. The calendar wasn't just random. The calendar is built around specific cycles that cause us to be the way that we are. The proof of the power of certain times in this calendar would come from the events that took place. But that was nothing more than a revelation that this time has a specific flavor, a specific significance that results in the possibility that an event like this can take place. So if we have slaves being freed on a massive scale on a specific day in the calendar, which is the time of Pesach, then we know that, oh, you know why this happened? Because the vibrations now of the stars and the planets around us, that's what they're vibrating now. They're vibrating freedom. So these people just grabbed the opportunity and they took the wave of freedom and got out from whatever their predicament was. And so now we know that this day has a specific significance in the way that it causes the human experience to take place. And so now we're in a time of destruction. Now we're in a time where what took place was not pleasant for us. It wouldn't seem to be a favor. We find big people, when they suffered tremendously, sometimes they would curse the day that they were born. They say, why was such a day created? A day where the vibrations could cause such a being to come into existence that's going to go through such conflict with whatever it's interacting with over here. Why would such a day even exist? And so in this month, in these days, terrible things happened. Not once, not twice, many times throughout our history. When nations are created, they're created based on the entities that are creating them. What are the ideals that are being worshipped? What's causing this nation to get out of bed in the morning? What's the driver? Something is being worshipped, otherwise there's no movement. What we worship seems to be weak in these times. If what we worship is weak, we are weak. If our organs cannot create what we are worshiping, then our body doesn't have the proper motivation. It doesn't have the right energy. And so this time would seem to be a difficult time for our people. And this is how we celebrate. We celebrate with sadness. And yet, the same month, only a few days after Tisha B'Av, we have Chamashos B'Av. The Mishnah says, Lo hoye yom tovim liYisrael, ke Chamashos B'Av v'yom HaKippurim. This month is the happiest month, other than the month where we receive complete forgiveness. A month where no matter what happened till then, if you have the right intention, that day will wipe away everything that happened prior. And so this goes back to the secret of suffering. Suffering is a secret. Suffering is such a secret that only the wisest of the wise would know it. And those who knew it would be able to invite on themselves suffering. Because when they knew this secret, the strength that they would get from the suffering would be more than the weakness that the suffering would cause. And this is not simply conceptual. This is a biological reality that we have to develop ourselves to. It's not something that we could simply say, oh, I know the secret. Now it should work for me. Well, that depends. What's important to you? What do you live on? What drives you? If the settings are right, then the secret will give all the power. If the settings are not there, then yes, okay. So suffering is meaningful in some other dimension. Why does that matter to me? Our nation we're specialists at suffering. We suffered more than any other nation. It's something we brag about openly. One of the reasons is because we've been here for so long. The longer you're here, the more you suffer. So automatically we would have accumulated the most suffering. But it happens to be that it's not just the quantity of suffering, it's also the quality of the suffering. And this didn't happen by chance. It was promised as part of the prophecies. The earliest prophecies start with, you should know that your children will suffer. And then, that's by Avraham Avinu. Then comes Yitzchak. Yitzchak tova yisurin. He said, whatever you had in plan, please give more. Esav got so confused by this that he thought that suffering is the goal. The religion that came out of Esav, they made suffering into the goal. That's what you worship. He suffered so you don't suffer, but now you're suffering because he didn't suffer enough. They're splitting the suffering between everyone. That's the divine plan. But what is it about suffering? Why suffering? What's so special? What does suffering do that nothing else can do to a human being? To the very organs that we're trying to redeem? And the answer is, obviously the answer is deeper than words. But to point at the answer, what humanity is suffering from is that we've lost touch with reality. We're living in a place that is not real. We're living in a mindset that doesn't reflect what's real. We've lost touch with reality. And so, if we create for ourselves comfort, we're worse off than if we're uncomfortable. If we manage to be comfortable in this situation, that's spiritually the worst kind of suffering. That's worse than any type of physical suffering. That means we are definitely missing our entire life. We might not know what that means. In our imagination, so what? So I missed it, big deal. At least I didn't suffer. But that's because we don't understand what's happening here. We don't get it. That's the only reason we could think that way. If we would know what this is, you would say, oh, make me suffer, but please wake me up. You let me sleep through all that? Because whenever we're sleeping, we're suffering. Maybe we're not suffering enough. We can still tell ourselves a story, but we're suffering. A lot inside of us is suffering. Distractions are not the solution. What our forefathers wanted for us is not distractions, better distractions, more advanced distractions. They wanted the real. The real is the best. It's not about the suffering. It's so that we can stop suffering forever. Humanity hasn't suffered enough to really look for the truth. That's a fact. You say they've suffered too much, but they're still not looking for the truth. They're still distracting themselves, thinking that there's a way out. There's no way out. The truth is the only way out. So what's the point of not suffering? It's only prolonging the suffering. How long do we need to suffer until humanity will realize that maybe we didn't get it? Maybe we need to rethink what we're doing. Everything that we did, everything that we manipulated, everything that we changed, thinking, oh, now we're going to make it easier, always it made it worse. We haven't understood the plan. We're not working with the plan. You can't manipulate this. This is much smarter than you. You can't outthink it. It's doing it to you. And so suffering is pushing us out. That's what suffering is for. Suffering means the organs are telling you the truth. The truth is, things are not what they should be. The truth is that we've created a story and we're trying to make the story comfortable. And that's not the way we're supposed to do this. And so when we're mourning, we're connecting ourselves to the highest and deepest pleasures, to the Gan Eden itself. When we're mourning this, then we have access to the Gan Eden. If we're okay with this, then we're really in hell. If we think it's okay, if we think it's good, then we've really lost it. And so this is why the destruction and the building is the same power, it's the same force. It's the force of the lion. What's the lion? The lion is very powerful and is very strong, but that only works in your favor if you're the friend of the lion. If you're the enemy of the lion's strength is a big problem. So this power that's in humanity, the power of the lion, that's our power, that's the kingdom of Yehuda, when we have a Malchus Beis David. And that's the same lion that turns against us when we turn on reality. That lion gets very frustrated. And then we have destruction. That destruction is the best part of the lion. Without that destruction, the world can just go and go and go and never turn back, never look for the truth, never find the way up. It can just go from one illusion to the next illusion, to the next illusion, to new technology and more advanced, and we're going here and we're going there, but you didn't do nothing. You don't even know where it starts and where it ends. We're just running in circles. We're already running away from this planet. People are already planning their escape from the planet. They haven't understood the first thing about this planet. They're running away. They're going to find a way to save themselves. So when we cry about the destruction, we're crying about the reality that became acceptable, the new normal. There's no other option, there's no other choice. The entire menu was butchered, there's nothing. And so when we're crying about that, it's better than laughter. It's the happiest thing that we could do, is to realize the reality of the situation, because the situation is not bad at its essence. It's only bad in the way it's dressing up for us. Because we're dressing it that way. It's a choice. It's ignorance that's driving. It's not a desire to be evil. In the Tikkun Zohar, it says that Yisrael, when the Torah says Yisrael, it's talking about the organs. The organs are the crowd that we're trying to direct so that they know how to behave. Yisrael has two responsibilities: Torah and mitzvahs. Some parts of Yisrael are more suitable for Torah. Some parts of Yisrael are more suitable for mitzvahs. Torah means following the intelligence, learning wisdom, knowing truth. And so the organs need to know to follow intelligence. There's an intelligent driver that's driving the organs. They need to follow intelligence. When organs don't follow intelligence, disease can easily follow. The organs also have another function. They need to keep each other alive. They have practical functions. Even in the external world, we have to go and eat. We have to go and sleep, because otherwise the organs can't maintain their energy. This is the mitzvahs. The organs have mitzvahs. They have to do their mitzvahs, and they have to keep their Torah. And then Klal Yisrael is united. then the Creator can dwell within that community. And so Torah is the relationship that the organs have with the neshama, with the intelligence, with the seichel that's creating them, that they're still loyal to the seichel that created them, to the intelligence within, and they're not giving their loyalty to things outside, to illusions and stories and drawings. And the mitzvah is the relationship of the organs with the nefesh that dwells in the blood. Are they doing what's required? Are they doing their function to maintain the quality of the blood? Are they keeping the mitzvahs? And are they learning Torah? If they're not doing their duties, the spirit, which is the communication between the neshama and the nefesh, the ruach that connects the neshama and the nefesh, the spirit that comes from the intelligence to the soul that dwells in the blood, gets disrupted, fragmented. If the organs are in conflict, the spirit gets fragmented. Different parts of it are doing different things. They're in conflict with each other. And then the nefesh is not getting what she needs. The blood quality is not what it should be. Then cognition is not what it should be. Then the entire function is not what it should be. That's called charbon. That's called galus. Galus means there's no longer the one dwelling within the many, because the many have left their posts. Each one is doing its own function. They're not working in harmony. They're not listening to each other. This is why when Klal Yisrael is ish echad b'lev echad, like one man with one heart, that's when the divine gets revealed. That's when the divine comes and tells us the wisdom directly. Because that unity of the 600,000 represents the unity of 600,000 angels within each one of us. When that unity happens, the intelligence can reveal itself. If that unity is not present, then there's a fragmented spirit. The fragmented spirit cannot perceive itself. It certainly cannot perceive the truth. And so when the destruction happened, our home was taken from us. Even if we own a lot of land and we build ourselves a very nice mansion, we still won't find home on this planet as long as our organs are not getting along. If our organs are getting along, then we can find home pretty easily in any place pretty much. Because that's our spiritual home. That's where we know that we're attached to something that's so much bigger than us that it includes everything. So this is a very special time. We might say that everything that we do in order to show our sadness for the state that humanity is in is essentially something we do to invite the redemption. That's why it says in Chazal, Kol hamis'abel al Yerushalayim, zoiche v'roye b'simchosa. One who cries over what's lacking, this propels him to see the eventual revelation that he's missing. One who doesn't feel anything has been lost, has completely lost touch with that higher truth. And so this is a time that's significant for redemption. This is a time where this force, the force that caused the destruction, that is exactly the force that's going to redeem us. This is his time. The destruction was the redemption. Before the destruction, people were going the wrong direction, and they took power from the fact that everything is okay. The destruction was the beginning of redeeming those people from their illusions. And then every nation, with its own story, with its own illusions, with its own system of keeping the minds occupied and keeping the intelligence far away from anything that's taking place. These are the exiles. One illusion after another illusion. Oh, this one it's not. Maybe it's this one. No, not either. Let's look for another one. Every superpower thinking they have it figured out. And then it takes a minute and two, and suddenly they're like, okay, maybe we missed. And this is not history. This is reality. This is still happening. This is not a story of there once were foolish people. No, the primitive were doing quite well for themselves as far as figuring out what's happening here. We're the fools. But at the end, it's the way that it was designed is that we can't lose. Because he put himself into this complex situation by design. And so everything that happens here ends up being a benefit. Because if it's your intelligence, isn't that what you would do? Wouldn't you use everything at the end in order to make it all be exactly what needed to happen? And so we see this dual explanation happening while humanity is going through this phase. We see the Torah speaking out of two different angles. On the one hand, oh, look what a tragedy, look how terrible, look what happened. And on the other hand, oh, it was all meant to be. He knew from the beginning what it's going to be. He designed it this way. This is the way it had to be. Oh, but look at this. Look what happened here. And this is because both are true. One of these storylines is trying to wake us up and bring us out of the illusion. The other storyline is the truth that we're going to realize after we wake up from the illusion. While we're in the illusion, we should believe that we're the culprits. We ruined it all. We're the problem. Why? Because that's the only way you're going to wake up. If you say, oh, he planned it, he knows what he's doing, it's all good, you're just going to stay on dreaming, aren't you? And so, no, this is terrible. How can you let it happen? Don't you see? Look what you've done. And then when you wake up and you see what's really going on, no, hands off. You've done? You've never done anything. You don't even know how this works. And so on Tisha B'Av, we're celebrating the part that says, look at what you did. Look what happened because you weren't paying attention. On Chamisha B'Av, we say, you did? What do you mean? He designed. It has nothing to do with you. You were created into this. This is the only way it was ever going to happen. So the only way to wake us up from our dream is to come into our dream. Agree with our dream first, and tell us within our dream why we're doing it wrong. Then we'll be ready to hear that maybe we're dreaming. If we still think we're doing it right in our dream, we just want to continue on dreaming. It's been working for me. Don't wake me up. And that's exactly what our forefathers didn't want. They knew how valuable reality is. They didn't want us playing around with nonsense, wasting our lives, and not realizing what's really taking place until it's too late. Once we'll know what it was, we'll understand how big the opportunity was, but we won't be able to act. They want us alive here now. Their suffering is for us. Everything that happened, everything that suffered till today, suffered for us so that we can be where we are and that we can realize that it's time to stop the suffering. They were willing to pay the price so that we can be here. So many generations. We paid the price till this day so that we can be here today. We added to whatever there was. It's still being added. Every day there's more. And all that because of a certain future that certainly will happen. All their suffering is part of our lens. Reality is where it is only because everybody was the way that they were. Everything added, everything is alive, everything is still here. Everything is going to become useful once we realize how this works. There's no losing in this game. But as long as we don't know how it works, we might think that we're losing. And that's very dangerous. There's no losing because there's no limit to the payout that's going to come after, based exactly on the amount of suffering that was invested into this, each one into their own project, into their own experience that only they know. Nothing gets lost. Nothing gets wasted. Reality is very precise. That's why we need trillions of cells to do it. And so the sadness is the happiness. Everything in the dual world, everything that is one way is really the other way. The suffering is about pleasure. The exile is about the ultimate freedom. It's the belief that these people had in the truth, the belief, the realization, the conviction that the truth is true. That was the secret that made suffering worthwhile. That was the secret that would allow them to take it on, and while they were having it, they were getting stronger, not weaker. Because they knew who and what they're doing it for. They understood that there's a bigger reality that they're investing in. They came here to invest. This is why they're in their bodies. They want to invest. They're investing in more pleasure than a human being can ever imagine. In realization that's not only in the flesh, but it's all the way through to the very root from where we perceive. There's nothing in between the one and the realization. And that pleasure is absolute. This gave them power. This gave them power even at the time when they were transitioning out of their body. They were still able to maintain their composure while they were suffering, because they knew without a doubt, not because someone convinced them, but because they understood the nature of their experience. They saw it even more clearly than they saw whatever they perceived with their physical eyes. It says on the day of Tisha B'Av, Mashiach is born. And that's because this day represents redemption. Just like it represents destruction. Destruction is never separate from redemption. Everything that comes into the duality, which is our dream state, is bringing the exact opposite effect with it while it's coming. There's no other way. And so may this be the year where Tisha B'Av is turned into a celebration of joy and happiness through the realization of the unity and the final redemption.